Welcome to another episode of the Tough Stuff Podcast.
Be sure to like, love, share, or subscribe wherever you may be watching or listening, because we believe God wants to bring encouragement and hope through these stories. What's going on, Tough Stuff Podcast? Episode 9. In the house again. Glad to be back.
Our actual house.
I wasn't here last week.
Put me facing the camera.
Put yourself right there.
You set this up.
Allison clearly subconsciously puts herself where she wants to be, but then she gets there and
Well, I didn't want to put you here. Be like, this is Chris and the ladies. You know?
Yeah, so episode 9, we know.
Tori's so nervous. We need to
Are
help.
you nervous, Tori? Who are you wearing today, Tori?
No, stop.
Tori's wearing an original Tori King. Just to introduce her.
She's not Tori King anymore.
Tori Townley, TT.
Get that right, sir.
T squared.
TT squared.
All right, I've said enough. You can take it from here, Alice.
Yeah, today we thought it would be funny. Well, let me just say this. This podcast is amazing. We've had some incredible stories of life change and of people. Why are you looking at me like that?
I mean, I'm all about the life change. I was getting excited about all the things that we've had.
So we have just loved this project, and it's gotten to be heavy at some point, you know? And so this week, Tori, my friend Tori King Townley,
What's up?
was texting me. You're so awkward.
I know.
Can you let him hear your voice?
Hey.
Tori was texting me and asking me questions about all the different episodes, but not about like the not the interesting stuff. It was interesting to her, not about like the
actual tough stuff.
She had questions about things that you just threw out there, like for instance,
Intense stuff. Like, you just said there's Roundup in the oats and moved on. What the world?
There is Roundup in the oats, just looking out for everybody. I try to sprinkle a little bit. I don't want to be like a know-it-all, but I want to help people. It's my heart.
But someone like Tori is, listening.
Full stop.
She's like, wait, my whole life is a lie.
And then she came in my house and began to look in my pantry, and the first thing she saw was oats.
Quaker, not even organic
They
oats.
weren't mine. They weren't mine.
Like oats?
I loved them until 2 weeks ago.
You might love oats, but oats do not love you. So we thought it would be a good idea to have Tori on here just to kind of break things up a little bit. I know this thing is called the Tough Stuff Podcast. And, man, life is tough. There's tough things that happen. And we've just seen, how Allison said, we've seen so much fruit from people just being honest and people chiming in. It's been one of the most encouraging things has been just people letting us know that they cannot wait till Friday comes.
I know. That's my favorite. I feel like we have rebranded Friday.
And honestly, that's a big thing to do. But it has been cool. It's almost, for me, it's been like, man, we got to keep this thing going. Almost a little worrisome at times.
Yeah, no, I'm not worried. I'm just getting started. This is awesome. But my favorite thing is that we've brought people on who have not shared their full stories before.
Yeah.
And so what's been cool to me is that while people are listening and getting encouraged by other people's stories, people that are sharing their stories are getting free because they're in a safe place sharing, the darkest, deepest things in their life. And I think that, to me, is like the coolest thing about this podcast.
Yeah.
But today,
Love it.
we wanted to bring Tori on because Tori actually was featured in episode 2. If you go back and listen, she is the first friend that I had when I started going to Healing Place. And I had just gotten out of a bad relationship that I was in. And I had just, turned my life around and didn't know, what I wanted to do with my life. And I met Tori. And Tori just so happens to be somebody who really hasn't been through like serious trauma. You have some things, but Tori is like this pure homeschooled.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, right?
This is so funny.
Right?
Keep going. Yeah.
Like
Pure and
you
homeschool.
are like this, like
Generational missionary Christian family.
Christian, like you've been a Christian since you were born, and you have this very, I want to say sheltered life, but it's not like you were sheltered. It's just that you never really had to face any major challenges like other people that have been through big adversities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So when I became friends with you, I was like, I don't even know the word. I was like very, I felt like an unhealthy person, obviously, because I didn't heal yet through all of my things. But you never made me feel that way. Like you allowed me to be your friend. And you were like this person that like, you didn't like party. You didn't like cuss. You didn't like do all these things that I had come from. And what I found so fascinating was that you did all of that and allowed me to add value to your life.
Yeah.
And it's not like you had to, but you let me. And so I think what's so amazing and what I want to share on this podcast and I want to talk about is how to love people in the tough stuff that they're going through and do it in like a way that brings value to them.
Yeah.
Because even though I was like beneath you, I know you didn't like when I said that the other day.
No.
Spiritually, like I was a much younger Christian.
Yeah.
You had been walking the walk for so many years. You, even though I was like newer to the faith, you made me feel like we were shoulder to shoulder, and I think that allowed me to grow, and it empowered me to like continue to discover who God was and discover myself. And so today I want to kind of talk about how can we love people through tough stuff. But before we get into that, I just want to know, do you have any questions for Chris? Because Tori is like really hung
Before
up.
we even get into that,
gosh,
though, I will say
so
Tori is like kind of like piggybacking off what you were saying. Tori on paper is about as white bread, white milk as it comes.
White milk.
I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about like rap sheet.
That's so
Rap
funny.
sheet.
But
If
she
you only
isn't
knew.
in spirit though.
Like,
Like exactly what you, like most people that have been in the church have been around as long as Tori has. And honestly, you just look at Christianity as a whole. Typically, as people become more and more pure in their own eyes, they become more and more judgmental. They become more and more boring. They become more and more lame. That's why most people, that was my issue with the church. I looked at people in the church and I was like, I don't want to be like them. They're lame.
Yeah, yeah.
Tori's got 2 nose rings, not just one, but 2, That's like extra, not lame.
It's a coil.
But it looks like 2, though. You know what I'm saying? If you got the heart to flex 2 nose rings.
Tori, low-key, Tori is like a hippie.
Yeah, I'm saying that isn't normal for like
Yeah.
where she comes on. I guess for you look at your family, they're
They're
all
all weird.
But just being in the church as long as they have been, usually people become more boring, more lame.
Cynical,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
judgy. Like
Well,
the more knowledge they get.
It's funny because first of all, I love this podcast so much. Like y'all, I binge watch. Like Friday comes like, should I watch it or should I save it? Because I love it so much. But it's so funny because I met you in like 2011, and all that you just said means so much to me because I felt the same way. Like you didn't look down on me. Because I grew up feeling insecure, like, oh my gosh, I'm just this sheltered little girl who's never been through anything hard. And like, I'm not even allowed to have a MySpace. And I just felt so, like, it was a big time struggle. Like, I have not, for no fault of my own, like, my parents love each other. They told me about Jesus. Like, I grew up just afforded so much spiritually. And I knew deep down, like, this is right. There's nothing that I did wrong or need to change. I don't feel like I need to go, like, wild out just because. But it was such a challenge. And I remember, like, I've known Chris since I was, like, 6 years old. It's so funny. Like, I have my diary from summer camp. Like, Chris is so cute. And but I remember watching, like, it's so funny to hear your commentary growing up because I remember like being at church and watching him like come in and out and share your testimonies at summer camp and being like, Jesus, this is hard for me to reconcile because like I can't get up at a summer camp and be like, oh, you saved me from this and that.
Yeah.
But I remember very vividly in high school, there was a moment where he was like, I'm not worried about all of that. I want you to celebrate people for where they are coming from and the darkness that they've walked through, and realize that every time you get to know their story, you're getting to know more of my nature for yourself.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
So I specifically remember you telling me, Allison, like, I told you about all that when we first met. I was like, man, your story, because you were so open up front about all of the things you've been through, like things you would have never shared on a first coffee. Like we had coffee, and she's like,
Somebody who's not really.
and I was like, whoa, she is deep. But it meant so much to me that you would trust me like that. And then I opened up in return, and I was like, my tough stuff is that I haven't been through tough stuff. And you were like, you know what? I feel like every time someone gets saved and their story unfolds in front of you, it's like your salvation is awakened.
Yeah.
Like you get saved every single time.
That's awesome.
And so when you guys, like, we all hung out as a group. It's so fun. But when you brought me in, it was like I had never had the chance to walk through this process of like radical being saved, and then as an adult processing growing up in your faith. And you like let me come walk hand in hand and like experience, you verbally processed every single salvation moment. And it was just like, I still look back at that moment and feel like I was saved all over again because you let me walk through that with
awesome.
you.
Wow.
So
I think there's so much just even in that statement, you know, like first off, like the fact of not God's rescuing power is one thing, but God's keeping power is a whole nother thing. Like I think about Christianity and where we're at today, and just from the secular viewpoint, people look at the church and it's mostly marked in their eyes by, you know, what the people in the church don't do. They don't party, they don't do this, they don't do that. And I feel like it's gotten completely backwards, where Christianity and following Jesus should be more about what you do, lack of better terms. But like somebody asked me, you know, it should be about the joy that you have in life, the peace that you have in life, the fun that you have in life.
Yeah.
That's what makes it attractive. We were on a mission trip to Mexico last week, and somebody asked me about my crazy diet, and they're like, you don't crave all these other things? And honestly, I would love to just out of pride say no, but I don't. And it's not, no, I don't anymore. Not on this other diets I have, but what I'm eating right now, like straight meat, I don't, because it's like
horrible.
Because I finally found what like really fills me, satiates me, keeps me happy, keeps me
back
full.
in episode 3, 4, maybe. What episode was it where, you know, we talked about, you know, you're looking for this.
Wait, you're deterring me. You're deterring me.
Joy and peace.
Because I'm finally eating what really fills me, I don't have a desire for other things.
Okay.
Wow.
And that's where I was going at with Tori's God's keeping power, is that she found the true fruit, she found the true food at the beginning, and she hasn't really found a huge desire to stray or go elsewhere, you know, because she's found what fills her. She found what life is found in. And then secondly, I just a little bit more, you hold your thought. Secondly, just that thought of like,
that's good.
but I think a lot of people, they get dull and they get boring in Christianity too, because they don't embark on other people's journeys like you did.
Oh, wow.
So like even in, not even Christianity wise, but psychologically, when you get into AA and like Alcoholics Anonymous and all that, the big book, they straight up tell you that if you don't join in somebody else's journey, that you're not going to make it.
Wow.
And I think there's so many people in the church who think they've made it, in quotations, because they're in the right place, but spiritually they find themselves still dead, still dull, still boring, because they haven't embarked in the beautiful kaleidoscope of what God is doing around them, you know?
Yeah, I feel like people struggle. I mean, as humans, we struggle to allow someone else's story to be sat in, you know, and I've talked about this on here. But what I loved about you was that was like your nature. Like, it was like you didn't try. You had genuine compassion, and you let me like work it out. Like, I mean, I remember I had so many questions. Like, what does this mean? What does that mean? What is this? What is that? And you were so gracious. You almost like put yourself in my shoes and answered my questions as if you were me.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, you allowed yourself, you dropped your like your pride, and you allowed me to like feel like we were, you know,
That's crazy.
connecting about these questions that I would have. Because I was so confused whenever I came out of, you know, everything that I came out of. And all I wanted was somebody to show me how to just like be a normal Christian and like do life like well,
so
you know,
fun.
like I wanted to know how to have peace, how to have joy. And if you know Tori is like, you're like this fairy godmother, Mother Teresa. Like, you're
A little
like,
Janis Joplin, a little Mother Teresa.
you're like this little like
gosh.
fairy. Like, you're
boy.
so easy to talk to. And I think that's like a big significant thing is like, if we're standoffish with people, like, we don't even allow them to enter into relationship with us. But not only that, you allowed me to offer things to you. Like, you allowed me to change your perspective in some ways.
So much.
You know, you were
Yeah.
this Christian who had been a Christian for however many years, and here I was, you know,
Yeah.
newer to the faith, and you were letting me shape your perspective. And that alone is something that gave me value as a new Christian, was like, I have, you know, value, I have worth, I have a voice, you know, those are all things that I wanted my whole life. And so I think there's something to being able to lower ourselves to do life with other people that are maybe not
To do life,
as
not just
far
ministry,
along as
but
us.
to do life.
Yes.
Like, it wasn't like
That's
she
what
was
it
like
was.
ministering
Yeah.
to you.
Not at
It was
all.
like, let's just go hang out. Let's just come along.
Yeah.
Like what Jesus did. He
Yes.
just said, hey, just come along with me. Let's do what I'm
Yes.
continuing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and I think people typically, to hear your story, like, you know, y'all are meeting and you probably pull out the bomb. Yeah, I dated some girls back in college. Like most Christians.
And I'm like, is Tori gonna think that I like
She
her?
asked me to coffee.
That's real. The whole time I was like, it's Tori. Like, what does Tori think? Like,
she
does Tori
didn't,
think
like-
that I'm?
She didn't allow that to create space between y'all. She
Yeah.
continued to even come closer and become friends.
But
And
you know what? You know why? You know why she could do that? Because you were solid in who you were. You were secure in who you were.
felt, but-
Well,
Yes.
Compared to me.
Foundationally, yes.
your foundation was
Yeah.
set, and so it was like, because you were so grounded, you know, you came from an amazing family. They taught you all of the right values and morals and the faith, and like you were on solid rock when we became friends. And because you were grounded in who you were, you never changed foundationally. And I think that's
Yeah.
what's key here, because I could have been somebody that could have been manipulative and, you know, with anybody.
I was like,
But
I'm
I
not
couldn't,
gonna.
because you were
I
like,
wouldn't.
you were so grounded in who you
Yeah.
were. And so I think that's important to
I remember
say.
you would like tell me I just used to struggle with codependency, and I am like, you cannot be codependent.
like,
It's impossible to
you're
be
like,
codependent. Like, you can't try.
Yeah.
Try.
Tori's also very elusive.
Like,
You
I
see
will
her
not
like
answer
1
you.
week.
See her now,
Yeah.
you don't.
Yeah, like we're just eating this up. I'm gonna disappear.
That was you,
Which is
and
what we
that's what I
needed.
needed.
Yeah.
You know, wouldn't text me back for like weeks, and I'd
I
be
know
like,
you'd have identity
"Are you
crisis.
okay?"
It's not you. I just didn't want to talk.
I think about that line from that podcast we listened to the other day that was like, though, Christians or people in the church are okay with sin as long as it's 2,000 or more years ago. And we look at people in the Bible. Moses was a murderer. Noah got drunk. We look at all these people with issues in the Bible that God used and God continued to draw near to.
Yeah.
Yet 2,000 years later, we hear about people's sin and we're like, oh, I can't really get too close to that.
Yeah,
you know?
it's like we don't know what to do with them, and we don't know how to approach them. And even like, people that you knew back in the day, like how can we, incorporate those relationships into our now,
Yeah.
knowing that, we're not where we used to be, but we still love people so much,
Yeah. I just love what you guys are doing here, because the way that you guys are taking people's stories and like exemplifying like how to process these dark moments and these hard things. And then like one of our foundational things as friends is like we have watched God flip the depths into heights. Like that verse Ephesians 3:18 is his love knows no bounds. Like every depth, every height is his extravagant dimensions. And so for me, I've just learned, like, okay, maybe I remember in high school I wrote, it wasn't a poem, but it was like this thing. I was like, God, I just feel like everyone else got these vibrant, beautiful canvases, and all you gave me was like this ugly pastel painting. I don't like it. But it always, like, he flipped that into something beautiful. And it was just like, if you will pursue, like, everybody's story, like, go as deep as you can. There is nobody that is too far gone. There's no... It was like a sincere curiosity for me. Yeah. It was not like, oh, I have to go do ministry. For you, like when I met you, I wasn't thinking like, oh, this poor girl, she's the new disciple. I was just like, oh, yeah.
Follow me.
Yeah. I was just like, you mean you want to be my friend? Because up until then, I was like, I'm still a dork. But it was just like, nobody was like, oh, can we do life together? You didn't give me a choice either. You're like, get in the car. We're going to take babies from the Dream Center to Hibachi, and we're going to do this and that. But it made my whole faith come alive again, because I'm just like, that was a season of wonder, like never before really in my life. I was just like, every moment, I was like, I've been doing outreach for this amount of time. I've been going to church. I've been loving people. But the way that you saw it was so much wonder. I was like, this is real. So I got to see it through your eyes, and it just changed everything.
Yeah.
So sincere curiosity.
Yeah. I just like, I look back at that time and I'm like, God, bring it back.
Full. I know. Now we got like babies. I'm like, how do you bring that into like this new era?
2.0. We have children now.
How do we live radically with
How can you live radically? Yeah.
Babies?
Once your kids are able to get themselves out of a car seat, and all of our kids are, it'll be a lot easier.
Big change.
Elijah started putting Sayla in her car seat. And he can buckle her.
Oh my gosh,
he can't buckle her all the way. I still have to go check it.
It's getting easier.
But it's like,
so nice.
Literally, we're like, okay, go put your sister in the car. And
Whoa, go ahead,
our
Elijah.
Our kids would see so much more of the world if they could get themselves fully in and out of their car seat.
It's
like the bane of your existence, right?
It is the worst. It's like when the carrier, oh my gosh.
Oh, gosh.
Cosmo now is like befriending old people. Like we were in Disney World recently, and he was like having lunch with them, following them out on the skyline. What's your name?
Older king.
He's like writing a little love note. It's like, you are my kid. I didn't know.
I think Tori may be my longest. Well, I don't know if we were friends when you were 6, but you might be the longest standing friend or person that I know.
We were not friends.
Yeah, but we knew each other.
I would have loved to be your friend.
If
but
you were in
so
Kids in
cool.
Action together, you were
Kids
basically.
in Action.
If you were in Kids in Action and I don't know that you're still around, please let me know that you're around.
But you were you were this person that Tori would always pray for.
Yeah.
You were like this really rough
like
dude.
In the dark room, in the mosh pit, and the gauges. And I'm like, oh God, bring them back to you. And then he come back, I'm like, he answered my prayers.
And then you married one of Chris's friends,
which
from
is
back in the day.
Because y'all all partied and stuff, and I'm just over here bopping around, waiting, and then.
Which of I mean, I guess I should have asked permission from Josh to say this, but the last time I saw Josh before he got saved, we were both on this snorting crystal meth binger up for multiple days.
We need to bring Josh
and then
on.
He gets saved, which his story is wild, following Jesus in the clouds and whatnot. Josh was always in parties with me, always part of shows, dark room, hardcore scene, all that, drugs, alcohol. And then we really do have to get him on here, like, because all I remember was out of the blue. He was changing a sign at the church, and then we ran into each other because I was an intern or whatever at that point. And then I remember just getting a phone call maybe a couple months later or a couple weeks later, and he basically was like, "Man, I just been following God," and showed up at his parents' house at that point, and they kind of, and I don't remember all that happened to it, but next thing I know, he's like, just think about not the magical, but the godness of that season. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, he's living in our dream center and like serving, and man, just get saved and get baptized in the Mississippi River, and like, which is very Josh Townley of him
so Josh.
In himself. But just, man, seeing God's hand of, where he pulled all of us from and where we're at today.
Yeah.
And so it's been so cool. Plus, also, I do want to give a shout. I guess it's a little late for shout outs. But we got 3 mics in here.
It's never too late.
Our first sponsor, our marriage counselor, Dee and Pete Adams. Thank you guys so much. They bought us a couple extra mics so we could interview up to 4.
She said, I want y'all to be able to interview couples. And
That's so cool.
So it was so much cool stuff. Hopefully we get Josh and Tori back here together to get all of his story.
Talking about racing chickens or something.
Well, let's take a second and talk about some of the questions you had for Chris. I just want to have an intermission here.
Yeah.
And then I want to wrap it up in a different way. But let's talk about...
let's take a turn.
But like we said, man, we were talking about tough stuff, and it is not all about tough stuff.
Did he just take over?
No, I'm coming back to it. I just want to you took a sharp turn, so I'm kind of rounding it a little bit, Yeah,
round it.
Life is not all just tough. Like, man, it is joy. It's goodness. It's fun, man. It's life.
Having joy whenever you don't want to.
Yeah. So, now give us your questions, Tori.
Oh, okay.
That was sharp.
Oh, boy. Y'all are something. These two are something. Boy, y'all don't need me. Every time I watch an episode, I have notes.
You take notes?
I intake the story, and I love people's testimonies, but there are lots of side notes that come up. So oatmeal was one that I was really concerned about, and also how have you eaten meat since just meat? Just red meat,
it's so good.
But no vegetables, because why not vegetables?
Because vegetables want to kill you, Tori. Vegetables.
Every time I cut asparagus now, it's like Veggie Tales, and
it sounds so crazy. But I have if you do know me, this is and do not take this as medical advice.
Yeah, that's a very good disclaimer.
But I will say
He's just a researcher.
For 13 years, I have been researching things. Because
you are the reason that I'm still paleo. Because when we were hanging out, it was all paleo. I watched you order, so I follow whatever you're doing. So be careful. I'm gonna get huge. How many times do you use the bathroom?
No, you don't get huge at all. Barely ever.
Wait, you barely use the bathroom?
You don't have gas.
You don't?
No, you don't. I have maybe, and I don't. I'm kind of feminine. But I've never been the one to admit that I fart. But I think I farted twice this year. If you don't know.
Is this podcast worthy information?
So I have been researching for 13 years, basically trying to repair what I have destroyed my whole life.
Which
through
is
drugs and partying, and man, had IBS when I got clean, hypoglycemia.
You're such a four.
Almost passing out at the point of my hypoglycemia.
There's
So red meat is the answer.
Yeah. So red meat is the last health food that we have. So if you really want to get into it.
You know what's so funny is I could care less about this conversation.
Go get the Quaker Oats.
But vegetables, all right, so let's go back to 2nd, 3rd grade. We all know plants are alive, right? We agree that plants are alive.
I don't even
right?
Yeah.
You know that?
I have heard this.
Plants are
so
alive,
many times.
so that means that they have plants know that people are trying to eat them. They know that people are trying to kill them. Fruits. So a plant, when you eat a plant,
let me just say this.
You're eating the leaves.
People are going to think that you're on drugs again.
No, he's done the research.
I'm desperate for people to live healthy. I'm desperate for people to be if you really want to get into it, most of the people that I know that are agnostic or atheists, you ask them why, and they say, well, my aunt died of cancer, and why would God allow my aunt to die of cancer if he loves us? Well, guess what? Cancer, for the most part, is a diet-related disease. There's things that you can eat that kill cancer cells. There's things that you can eat that grow cancer cells. So the food industry is big food. I mean, we're talking about multi-billion-dollar industry whose main objective is to make money. The love of money.
You just moved your
the love of money is the fruit. The love of money is the root of all evil. So you talk about these big food corporations that are making billions of dollars off of getting people sick. Vegetables are one of the most profitable things there are. I mean, they grow out of the ground. You know, we didn't even eat vegetables as much as we did until the Great Depression, when people needed vegetables because they couldn't afford meat. But plants, you eat a plant, you're eating the life source of it. You're eating the leaves, the stems, the roots, the seeds. You're eating the things that the plant wants to keep, whereas a fruit is something that this tree produced for you to eat. That's why it tastes good.
That makes more sense.
That's why a plant does not taste
That makes
good.
more sense.
Like, think about a Venus flytrap. It literally knows that flies are around and it kills them. It eats them. That's how smart plants are. So plants create oxalates. They create all these different acids that are anti-nutrients. They kill nutrients when you put them in your body. Allison is now bored, so we'll go ahead and go for Tori's
next. Like homesteading, can I grow?
Keep going.
Even if I have a garden, then
no, go for it. So there is,
but the vegetables still want to kill me, even if I grow them myself.
For the most part, yeah. Now, if you grow them yourself,
in the backyard.
if you grow them themselves, they won't be as, because you're not using, I mean, obviously they're going to be healthier because they're organic.
Okay.
I mean, vegetables, don't get me wrong, they have nutrients in them for sure. They're nutritious, but they also have anti-nutrients in them. And they're just not the best source for nutrients.
But meat is the best.
A steak has all of the vitamins that a blueberry has, but more. Like, kale was one of the worst things ever.
It's not funny.
Yeah, kale's horrible for you. That's why you drink a kale smoothie and you're in the bathroom. It's horrible.
I thought that was good.
No, it's not.
Take a good. Okay.
Let's move on to a different question.
So this one gets pretty deep.
But text me, DM me.
Be careful. I do it cautiously because it'll give you a lot of information. I have many more questions on that, but we can do the different. That could just be later off the record.
Maybe that could be another episode that I'm not a part of.
There's so many questions, but one is you talk a lot about. I don't know if this is good. No, Chris. Like, you talk a lot about different substances and things like that, but your process of like you're like Ambien and portals in the walls. Like, oh, that sounds cool. Woo, try that. No, I'm kidding. I don't. I relate so much to the way that you process and like just. This got deep again.
Well, it's funny because you texted me and you were like, I think I was supposed to be an addict.
I think I missed my chance. I would have been an addict 100%. But I think that, so you're an Enneagram 7?
I was until you guys confused me last week.
I really think you're a 4. I really think you're a 4 because everything you say is like, I relate. It's so funny listening to y'all talk about marriage too, because every like conflict that you mentioned, I'm like, that's me. I relate to what is going on in that moment because it's like that all or nothing. You said it's rainy outside and the day is done. The day is over. I'm like, yeah, I just don't do good with bad days.
Yeah,
and it affects you so much. But
for
that
sure.
All or nothing situation, like I can't understand. How do y'all work in? Like, okay, tell me how you clean the house. Like, are you like, let me sweep that corner and then good? But you're probably like top to bottom.
Let me tell you what.
Is he all or nothing with it though?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Every day, if that island is clear, I feel like a level of peace, but I'm not like totally content.
Just the island.
But the island is clear. But the sink is full. She just puts everything in the sink, which I'm the one who cleans dishes. It drives me crazy.
She just gives it to Pass it on.
But
gosh.
I every day I go on like a rampage kind of. But I don't. It doesn't have to be all done.
You just do a little bit.
I think I might have some
think
ADD.
Certain things. I think we do. She has certain areas that if she's clear with, and she'll just live in that area for the rest of the day. The bedroom may be dirty, but the living room's clean, so let's sit on the
It's hard
couch.
out here in these.
No, for sure.
streets.
Definitely is with
Nuts.
kids.
Especially with two
and-
kids, 4
No.
and
You're doing a
one.
good job, but I think
Oh,
that
thanks.
I envy the fact that my husband Josh is the same way as you, where he can just be like, "Oh, I'm gonna cut part of the grass, just the backyard." I'm like, what a luxury you live in that you can just go and do half and come back in and it's fine. How?
Now, being married for 10 years, she has watered my OCD down a little bit. We balance
Why
each
is
other
it
out.
me? Like why have
We
I?
have balanced each other out. I rephrased myself.
She has.
I
Do you envy
rephrased
that
myself.
about her, though, that she
Oh, yeah,
does
for
not
sure.
care?
I live in
do
the
too.
gray.
For sure.
Y'all are both black and
So
white.
intense.
I can't sleep at night if there's certain things that are
Yeah.
not done, or there's things that are like I've struggled last night. I cut a workout short, and like
That would drive me nuts.
It drives me
but
nuts.
you can do CrossFit once a month, once every 3 months. I'm
Allison
like,
got in the
yay.
cold tub. She got in the cold plunge today, then looked at the time and was like, "Oh, just dip." I will be late to everything, but I'm about to get what the recommended dosage is.
Chris,
Oh my gosh.
yes.
But yeah, what's the point if you're not going to do the whole...
I don't know. It shocks your
It's
body.
free, I guess. It's
I
a
am
level of
so
freedom that
I
I
am
don't
free.
understand.
I am free to do whatever I want to do.
That's
You know
why
what I
we're
mean?
Friends, because I'm like, wow, please just
Like
teach
there, I
me.
don't feel like there are any rules.
But you've balanced out my relationship with God so much because my relationship with God is so
Rigid.
rigid.
That, I related to that too. You're
Yeah.
like, I haven't heard from God in 2 days. And she's like, what?
I'm like,
You're not supposed to...
I literally talk to God all day.
I asked Josh the other day, I was like, so, like, what's God spoken to you? He's like, I mean, when I got saved, he told me to stop drugs, and I know he's real because he showed me. And I was like, that was like, you are living on, like, that word is still fresh to you. Like, what a joy. You just went on your life. I can't.
I need reassurance
You're
regularly.
striving
Oh
in the
my
closet
God.
like God.
Oh, this is hysterical.
So good.
How about when Chris said he at one point hoped I would get into a car
I
accident?
forgot about that.
I thought I told you that
No,
before.
that was
I was
like that caught me so off guard.
But low key,
I was
I think
like-
some people may relate to that thought.
Tori related to.
I was like, no.
Well, when things get tough, it's easy to just think God's gonna take you,
Divine intervention,
take it out,
man.
take
Like,
you
It's
out.
all or nothing,
We're either gonna be amazing or you're gonna die.
But really, that's like, it just shows how, I mean, that's
Immature?
how
Oh,
immature,
I'm kidding.
but how bad of a place we were in.
Yes.
I was desperate for something to change,
yeah.
This is
I
a
think people
wild
been there.
episode.
People been there.
Yeah. Thanks for the link for those that watch it on YouTube.
I don't
You
think
can watch
I-
on Spotify now.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Oh, the lamp.
This was.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No.
He said he was
please.
scrolling Instagram and repented. He's like, went back. It was a lamp. Like, what kind of lamp was it?
It was that lamp from A Christmas Story. No, I'm joking.
What kind of lamp was it?
But that's that mentality of like, if I'm going to be an addict, I'm going to be a serious addict. If I'm going to be clean, I'm going to be very clean. And it's a double-edged sword. It probably,
Like, I'm just gonna be though.
Yeah.
You're
like, oops.
I don't need to
cool.
we understand that you can be, babe, and we all wish that we
That's the
could.
outside thought.
If
However, do you feel
I-
haunted? Like, I feel
He does.
haunted. There's-
You feel like you are like not arrived spiritually, but you have like.
I feel like
content in
I
yourself.
love
She's
who
so
I
content.
am, and
She's
I
so
feel
content.
whole and happy
and
and
it's
content.
such a
Like you
blessing.
could never say anything that would make me like not
Yeah.
love myself.
Which is why I love you so much. Because it's like, what the world?
Godliness plus contentment is
But
great gain.
That is like
I'm incontent with not being content. So now,
He's
Well,
like, I love
let me even
pain.
say this. It wasn't until recently when I really worked through some big stuff that I started to get confident, and that's been a process. It's not like I am not like a, confident person.
But you're not like striving all, like, I feel like.
No, I am-
I'll keep being
You
like,
feel like I'm
we
striving
are
all the time.
striving. Like, well, it's like we want to please, we want to make God proud, we want to make sure.
You don't
It's
think
like,
God's
oh.
proud?
Like when you asked him the other day, you said when he has a bad day, he feels like he's a bad dad or a bad husband. You're like, that's sad. And he said, yeah, it is. And I was like, I know, it is sad. That's how I feel too. Like, you're not 100.
You don't think God?
I have Matthew 3:17 tattooed on me because it's a struggle for me to believe that God's proud of me. But I mean, I grew up with no dad. I grew up with nothing there. So it's like I've lived that way for, I'm 35 now, 13 years. So that means, I don't know, do the math. That's what, 22 years that I lived not having any affirmation
Let
at
me ask
all.
you this: when Elijah or Selah does anything,
I am a preacher, babe. You're about to bring up the child analogy, and I understand that I'm proud of my son despite what he does. But it's still like, I mean, it's in my head, but that really is, it's got to get down to my heart. And my heart is, I feel like a big part. That's why I feel like worship is such a big part of my life. Because worship, I feel, connects my head to my heart. So there's moments in worship, and there's moments for sure with God and in his presence where I understand that he's proud of me. And I think about the Israelites. God always told them to go back and reflect on what I pulled you out of, to tell your sons, your grandsons, and never forget about it. Just kind of like Josh, I go back and I have to feed off of that regularly. Yeah. Okay, I looked at a lamp yesterday. God still loves me because I used to smoke crack and he loved me then, Yeah. So I've got to constantly go back and pull stuff from my past.
Yeah.
Not to mention like all.
Maybe you should tell me you're proud of me more.
Look, I've been really sweet.
You have been. You have been. Until we started this right before we started this podcast.
We got into it.
Making Tori a little uncomfortable.
Tori was like,
Do some creepy.
oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, you have been through trauma, and when you go through trauma, it gives you different filters of ways to look at things. Like, I feel like, at least with me, I would look through the lens of shame for a while, and I would look through the lens of fear, and I would look through the lens of rejection. And I feel like when you go through trauma, part of that healing process is getting rid of those lenses,
Yeah.
So for you, like, to, have to go all the way back to God loved me when I was doing crack. That's a lens that you're having to, like, manually.
For sure.
pull
And
off.
I think with some of those things, we all know God sometimes does a miracle in a moment, and sometimes he does a miracle over a long period of time. And there's a sense too that I really like, man, I think about the story of Lazarus. God says, hey, get up, you're alive. But then there was an unwrapping that takes. But the unwrapping takes work. And I feel like there's so many things that a lot of people just are praying and waiting for God to just do themselves. But some of it takes discipline. Yeah. Like, it takes me having a discipline of when I begin to feel insecure, of going and finding an old journal or something that I wrote down, or getting into worship, or, even meditating on the word of God. I feel like discipline is so huge as a disciple. Like, somebody was waiting for God to move, and he's like, I've given you enough to move with. You just start putting it to action.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting is that even though you haven't been through, like, significant trauma like he has, there's still work that you're having to do and I'm having to do, which is just interesting that there's work to do regardless, but it's just a matter of, like, what kind of work is it?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, it is so funny to me because I hear y'all gone through trauma, you've gone through hard stuff. I'm like, wait, but I still have these deep questions about, I just need my identity to be reaffirmed, and I'm, like, looking for significance and meaning. And I do have to remember, okay, I know what the truth is. I know.
Yeah.
I remember I went to counseling for a little while because I had some bouts of depression and different stuff. And shout out to the Well Clinic, Dr. Y, Melody, we love them. But one of the things he like reminded me of the story, like the widow who was like, I don't have money to pay my bills, but then I think it was Elijah was like, feed me. And she's like, I don't got nothing. And he's like, go back in your house and fill the jar. Like, you have jars. Like, just collect. And it was like, what is in your hand? What has God already given you? And just like even the story about like, pick up your mat and walk. Like, I feel like I did something wrong if I'm not hearing from God. And I've been through a dry patch like fairly recently where I'm like, I have not fine-tuned something. There's something wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. And it's like, do you remember? Like, why did you forget who you are all of a sudden just because you're not performing or producing? Like, I used to do a job where I am leading outreaches every single day. I'm out and about with people. I've got, like, my jewels and my ones, and I'm seeing miracles. And in my season right now, I am working from home. I have a 5-year-old who is not diagnosed, but he is definitely ADHD, psycho, love him. But my season is so much different. And God has had to, like, he's still doing work in me to be like, look, it is not about all these, like, moments that you collect. Like, it's about, I want you to surround yourself with the right mirrors, first of all. Like, social media is not a mirror, but for me, sometimes it will just, like, reflect back to me this identity that I'm not supposed to wear. I'm not supposed to have thoughts in my head or whatever it is. But if I'm looking in the mirror of God's word and I have people, like, life-giving people around me who are saying, hey, like, even just this talk today, you're like, hey, this is how I saw you. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. That's so cool. That's me. And you all are like,
That's the affirmation I needed.
but really, like, that's why mirrors, having the right people, it's so important in how you see yourself because that's how you interact with your whole life. So
I think it just speaks to the brokenness of humanity. You know, a lot of times we can, you know, trauma is such a hot topic word. It's so sexy to use the word trauma and blame things on our trauma. And a lot of it has it's legible, you know, it's accurate. But I feel like, you know, we all live in trauma because if you really want to get biblical, we're all sons and daughters of Adam and Eve. And that was the greatest trauma there ever was the fall. And, you know, once they fell, they went into hiding. And they went into hiding and they needed reassurance from God. Hey, they were hiding because they thought God didn't love them anymore. They thought God wasn't going to accept them anymore. And that's that constant thing of not being perfect or not doing enough. And then you almost like hide. And I mean, I feel like we all live with this sense of discontentment. I mean, you look at it even from a secular point of view, you know, all these people are all about world peace. We want peace, but they've never known peace. You know, peace has never even been a thing in the world. Well, how do they know that, you know, this thought of world peace is even attainable or a good thing if they've never experienced it? It's because we were all born with a brokenness within us because of our disconnection with God and with Jesus, you know? So I think we're all just trying to, whether we grew up with trauma or not, there's some things that just exemplify that and magnify that even more. But, like, man, we all know that something's not right in life.
Well, and we all have to take God by the hand and let him mold us into who we're supposed to be. And sometimes that is removing pieces of our past that are dangerous for our present or the future. Or sometimes it's just, you know, molding like softer things that we struggle with or, you know, different things like that. I feel like God is constantly taking us, each and every person, on a journey. And part of the beautiful thing is that journey period is tough, you know, like just because you grew up the way you did does not mean that you will not face tough things. And I know you have faced tough things. Yeah. And so it's like allowing God to take you by the hand and walk you on this journey, no matter what stuff you go through. Yeah.
And definitely having people around you make it, like, if it weren't for you and your holy carelessness, like, of being a child of God. And, like, I mean, seriously, it is. It's being a child of God. Like, over and over again, Jesus says, you must become like one of these. You must become like one of those children. And, like, like you were saying earlier, Elijah and Selah, they definitely don't try to please and perform for us at all. But they know that we love them, you know what I'm saying? And you live and walk in that, babe. Like, you walk in it to a point where it makes me jealous, but it also makes me look back and realize, man, I just need to chill out at times. Like, I think we've always probably, and definitely don't come to me for financial advice, but like, we probably, by the world's standards, make horrible financial decisions. Yeah, we don't have this huge savings account. We don't have this. And then you just stepped away from a job went part-time for a job working for this trafficking agency that hasn't even been able to pay you yet. And it's like, on paper, that is the most foolish decision, but on paper also, it is the most childlike decision. It says, my father's going to care for me. He's going to provide for me. He's telling me to take this step, so I'm going to take it. And like, even in 2024, like Christianity, we have faith, but we work our fingers to the bone to stack our 401k. And I feel like there's a balance. Yeah, we're supposed to be good stewards of what we are, but what we have, what God gives us. But also, I feel like there's a balance of that childlikeness that you've blessed me with, for sure.
Well, in the last year, I mean, it's like a step of faith is going to require obedience. And so I have watched God ask me to take a step. I mean, I think about Abraham. Like, I still have no idea what God's doing in this season in multiple facets. But I know that God asked me to make a step. And so I think having that faith and that confidence that God's going to take care of me, it's almost like I feel like he told me to do this, and so it's his fault.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the reality, is if God tells you to do something, it's like his fault. Like, it's his.
But even the confidence that you live in, like, God told me, I'd be like, am I sure? Because it's not going right. Like, I don't know. Am I sure? Did I hear it wrong?
There are seasons where I feel differently about different things, but I know that I'm where I'm supposed to be.
It's so
and
cool.
it's been really cool, but it's definitely been unpredictable.
Yeah.
But these are the seasons that are fun with God, because you don't know how he's going to do certain things, and then he does it in a way that you never thought, and it's the adventure. I wouldn't trade that for anything.
No, I think that's and that's one of those things too that reignites that faith inside of you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're like just walking, and I'm like Moses trying to reassure God, hey, God, you said you were going to take care of us, But I think about the faith, how many people that are Christians today are even still taking steps of faith? Where God, it's like, God, if you don't move, if you don't follow through what you call me to do, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yes.
And I feel like we've put ourselves in so many of those situations, and that's why we're so full of just stories of God coming through, because we've just been obedient and just trusting God at his word. You think about the adoption deal, putting ourselves out there to adopt Elijah, and we were both not making anything, working for a church, and all we knew about adoption was it cost about $60,000, and seeing God providing that. But we had to put ourselves out there, and we would have looked like idiots. I think about Moses in the desert all the time. He's like, God, you got to move, or all them Egyptians are going to see.
Wait,
God just called them out to die.
Don't you think that is where God gets the most satisfaction from us? Because he can see, his vantage point is way bigger than ours. And so it's like, I think God just sits and waits for us to just drop everything for him, and that's kind of where I'm at. And now I don't feel like every season is like this. I mean, maybe it will be. Maybe that's how my life's going to be. But it's been very interesting watching God do what only he can do, because I know it's him. And those things are what build your faith for a future season, But what I want to get into now, and this is as we're closing this thing out, I want to talk about, and I kind of want to open it up for y'all to go back and forth and us to kind of talk how, somebody may be watching, okay? Maybe there's somebody that grew up in the church, and they're around other people that are not as like Christian as they are or whatever. Or maybe there's somebody that didn't grow up like living the best of behavior life. And they're like, I feel like there's people that get their life together and then they become judgmental. You know what I mean? So how I want to have the conversation of how do you like take people along for the journey? How do you love people well without that layer of like criticism coming from different places? Like, how do you push past, the frustration of what they're going through or struggling with?
That's a good question.
Y'all, is it?
No, I think, I mean, dude, you got, like, it's crazy how basically wicked our flesh is. Here I am 13 years out of just craziness, you know what I'm saying? And I am so easily, like, it's almost to the point where, like, people walk into church with tattoos, and I'm like, oh, the dude's got tattoos, in church. And I'm like, but God's got to, like, kick me in my butt and be like, dude, like this or that. Because that's how wicked our flesh gets of wanting to be judgmental. Because we're desperate for, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I'm desperate for, I guess, maybe my own self-validation or affirmation. So I'll draw pride out of where God has brought me to and look down on other people. Or, I think about, and I think some of the holiness of God is, one of my biggest insecurities is that I don't fit in. Yet my flesh wants to fit in with all these people that are the who's who of the church zoo or this and that. Yet God doesn't even allow me to fit in there because that'd probably be way too tempting for me to even handle. In other words, He doesn't tempt you beyond what you could take. So I don't fit in there. So then I'm constantly reminded and humbled of, I just need to go after the one who is the most unlovable, who is the most lost.
Misunderstood.
And understanding that this is my lane, is to be for others what I wish I had when I was that age. Of somebody that wasn't straight white bread, white milk.
Like Tori.
Not like a race, but the rap sheet. But, it looks like they've lived around, they've experienced some of the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like
They've had adversity.
if you look at somebody that has never had adversity or has never sinned, because sin is fun, and it really, if you're doing it right, it really is. But if somebody has never sinned and you're trying to tell me that this is better than sin, how am I going to believe you? Because you've never sinned. You don't know how good this thing could be.
Yeah, but that is just so your lane.
Yeah.
Like and I think you're finding that groove of like, okay, I'm different in order to make a difference for those people.
Yeah.
And
it's a constant.
Because people remember you, like people are like, oh, the guy with the tattoos. And that to some people, you like make them feel at home.
Yeah.
Just because of who you were and who you are now.
And it's not easy though, is what I'm trying to say.
But
like,
how do you love those people?
The people that are messed up.
Yeah.
I reminded myself that I'm messed up,
Yeah.
And that's what.
Like, how do you, but you do this so well. How do you take, like, you're always on the phone with people. People call you, you answer. I never answer my phone. Like, ever.
Well, I love
Tori
people.
definitely doesn't answer her phone. But, like, you're always, you're ready to talk to people. And I guess it's from, your past and you really have a heart, like you're a pastor. And so you have a heart for people to, experience freedom and stuff. But how do you like allow broken people to come alongside you and do life with you and feel valuable and feel loved by you?
Pretty much by telling them how messed up I am.
Okay,
And that
fair.
God still loves, like just sharing my being vulnerable and real with people, I feel like, I've been told many times as a pastor, hey, you kind of let it all hang out there, you're kind of sharing a little too much. But I feel like for me, I relate, and maybe I just have it wrong. Like I was telling my small group this morning, like maybe I'm doing it wrong or something's wrong with me, but I don't think there will ever be a day that I am not tempted by things. And maybe you are supposed to get to that place, but I'm like, unless you castrate me, I'm pretty sure I will always have temptation in my life. and I'm not going to sugarcoat it and act like I don't. So like I relate, like I guess I'm so much closer, which is maybe scary to you as a wife, but I'm a lot closer to, and remind them, this is kind of AA talk, but I've got to remind myself I'm only one bad decision away from being wherever everyone else is.
We all are. We all are.
Yeah.
You know.
So
from your vantage point,
On that note,
yeah,
frustration.
because that's true. Because you cannot say, "Oh yeah, I understand." Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the empathy that you have for somebody like that is not from a place of understanding.
Yeah,
yours
which
has
used
to be
such a big struggle. Like,
Yes.
I can't relate to you, and
But yet
I'm
you still-
flawed in that.
Yeah.
But I think it sometimes makes me appreciate it that much more because I'm like, tell me, like you said, the compassion. Like, I'm curious. Like, what has God done? I don't know how He works in situations like this. And then there's times too where it's like, when I'm not like in a season where I'm interacting with humanity constantly. Like, you have to understand, I was every single day, you know this, like every single day, interacting with people of all different walks of life, and just, it was in my face all the time. So I'm processing God's beauty. But in a different season, He's had to like step me way back and be like, that's awesome. I brought you through that. I'm so proud of you for that. Love it. But you never took the time to love yourself, which is a very confusing, like, we don't really get taught about that in church. I don't even know if that's biblical. Like, what does that mean? So
Yeah.
Dr. Wise had to help me with that too. But like, I had a moment a couple years ago, maybe like 5 years ago, where God like was like, stand in the mirror and talk over yourself, like my words for you. And I was like, that is so cheesy.
Yeah.
I am not doing that. That was ridiculous. But I did it, and it was like, oh, you're beautiful. And it started off so, I was like, God, this is bad. No.
you have that on video?
God, no. No. But as I was obedient, like I had a little anointing oil, I was like, okay, whatever. The more that I spoke, there was like prophetic words started pouring out of me, and I was like, I've never had these thoughts about myself. It was like promises. It was calling things out, talking to insecurities. It was just like this whole thing,
Wow.
like, if you only knew how I see you. And I still need to go back and revisit that. But because I was able to have that moment, I feel like it enabled me to see people through those eyes. Like, it brought a different kind of depth
Wow.
of like, okay, now you love me like that. If I can accept that love for myself, how much more can I be
Yes.
able to whatever? Like, I feel like I was good at loving people before, like genuinely, but there was just something different when it was like, now you feel it.
Yes.
You know?
You feel seen by God, and then you can see other people.
Yeah.
One thing that you've always been really good at is like you said, getting curious for people or for their stories. You were always such a great listener to me, and you were like, and this is a very practical, I think this is a practical piece of advice. When someone is talking to you and telling your story, you would always like respond back. Like when I would say something that was like, vulnerable, you would go, and it's just so simple. Like, this is how easy I feel like this could be if we all practice. You would go like, wow. And I would be like, I know. But see, when you do that, you make somebody feel heard
Yeah,
and like and
affirmation.
affirmed and valued. And so I
And
think
that's not a trick. That's just sincere.
no,
like,
sincere
oh,
curiosity.
Yeah.
Wow, you just said that.
Yes.
And vulnerability, like, it helps people feel invited and safe
Yes.
and trusted, and it invites me to be vulnerable. Like,
Yes.
I didn't even know I had something to be vulnerable about. Like, all of a sudden, here I am.
Here we
Like,
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know which one of you guys, like back in the day, it may have came from Tori originally, but it was like almost this whole thought or perspective of meeting people like a treasure hunt.
was
Like
Tori.
always, like
Definitely Tori.
seeking out the treasure. And God has this treasure in life, whether it be things He does in your life or things that He's doing in other people's life. But like Tori would literally meet random people, whether it be somebody with special needs that's homeless, or Allison, very close comparison, not to compare you two, but she'd meet people and almost would be like,
Yeah.
you would allow them and listen to them
were
because you were
treasures, sir.
digging for the treasure.
That
You were
happened.
like,
Yeah, that's my life philosophy because it's such a funny story. But I was 16 on a mission trip in LA, and that was at the Dream Center. We were on Skid Row, and I remember being mad at God. I was just like, this is not fair. I was like, I grew up, I have parents who love me, I know about Jesus, I have church, and these people were born into poverty, or maybe they made choices to get here, maybe they didn't, but like, why me? Like, I was so mad. And I felt like he honored my anger, and he was like, I hear you, but I need you to just listen to me and trust me. Like, I'm sovereign. I'm writing everybody's story, but your job is to treasure people. So I like remember that whole week. It was so crazy. I like had a moment where I was reading my Bible. My dad told me, like, I think I was just telling my dad about all these questions I was having, and he was like, just ask God.
such
I
a
was like,
foreign concept to me to like go talk to your dad about all the spiritual questions that you have.
Sorry, trigger. But what's funny is he referred me back to God. He's like, okay, just go get your Bible and ask God to talk to
Wow.
you. So I did, and there were like 4 or 5 verses I flipped to that all said like, it was like Zechariah 9:16, like my people are gonna sparkle like jewels in the crown. Everything had to do with treasure relating to people. And I remember praying, and God was like, every single person you see on this trip, you're going to be on Skid Row. There's people using garbage bags as blankets. They're shooting up. There's rats everywhere. They're covered in manure.
Yeah.
Manure.
Poop. I don't know. He's like, those
Feces.
are my jewels. Like, they're buried in something, but you need to go out and look at every single person differently. Go
Yeah.
see people as a jewel. And then the next day, we went on an outreach, and I like made friends with this girl, and she was just telling me her story. I fell in love with her. I gave her my Bible. And right before we left, I was like, hey, what's your name? And she goes, my name's Diamond. And I was like,
Heavenly
And
mic
so
drop.
that was like when I was 16. And so ever since that day, I go back to that, and I'm like, that is what my life is about. And every time I meet, I know I said this, but like, I've had so many people repeat this back to me in their own terms, but just saying like, every time you encounter a person, you encounter a facet of God that you couldn't have known otherwise.
good.
It's like that's enough for me to be curious.
And that curiosity speaks to the person that you're
Yeah.
talking to. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
They feel
like, you
that
can
love,
tell.
yeah.
Like I could tell that you really wanted to know like what I was going through, and that's huge.
Because I really believe every person is like Jesus in disguise. Like the least of these, every person
Oh,
is
that's
a
what I was
least
about
of
to
these.
go at.
Yeah,
I was about to go
that's
at that.
funny. See?
Like when you look at the word, I guess it really goes back to taking the word for what it is and not what. I heard somebody, I guess it was Francis Chan. He said, if you were on an island and you had no experience with the church as you know it, and all you had was the Bible, what would your life look like?
Whoa.
But when we really take the Bible at its word, Jesus said, you know, when you visited me in prison, when you fed me, when you clothed me, and they're like, oh, when did I do that, Jesus? And he said, whenever you did this for the least of these, you did this unto me. And I just think about this whole concept of like, Tori has been able to live that way because she's constantly gotten face to face with Jesus. Not face to face with the church, but face to face with Jesus. And when you get face to face with the broken, and I feel like there's so many people that are going to prayer meetings and small groups, and they're reading their Bible more than ever, and they're hungry for a breakthrough, but their breakthrough isn't found at the altar. It's found in getting face to face with the least of these. And getting face to face with Jesus. Because then when you get face to face with Jesus, he can do things inside of your heart. But once you get face to face with Jesus, I think about the Israelites, they constantly said, if we see you, God, we'll die. But when you get face to face with Jesus, your flesh will die. And you will say, I will forget everything that the world has told me is worth anything. And I just want this. I just want to get face to face with you again and again. And it's so hard, even as a pastor, to forget about the multitudes and get face to face with the lonely, the lost, and the broken. But it is in dire need for your spiritual health. You know?
Because it takes your mind off of your issues.
And that's the only time we can allow Jesus to really do something in our heart whenever we try to not do it ourselves.
It's so good.
I think it's crazy too because for a long time I was like, what does the least of these mean? Like, maybe it's not always like, there's this specific list, but I feel like he's kind of even opened my eyes to see like every person is least in some way. Because I'm like, wait, do people not see me? Like, do they see Jesus in me? I don't know, because I don't. But it's just like you leaning into someone's weakness or their pain. That's like where they become least. And it just, I don't know, you experience, like you said, like the love of Jesus. It is a mirror situation. I tell Cosmo, my son, all the time, like, come here. And I stare in his eyes, like, I see Jesus in your eyes. And he's like, what? Like, he thinks I'm so weird. But I'm like, when you grow up, you're going to understand. Like, as you get older, you're going to remember this. But it just, even if I'm mad at him and I do that, I may be like, it may just be a practice at that moment. I'm like, I see Jesus in your eyes. Not really. I'm trying really hard to see Jesus in your eyes. But it just helps me, like, okay. And then also, like, it's obvious sometimes. Sometimes you're like, oh, I'm hanging out with someone on the streets. I am at an outreach. I'm doing the right thing. But there's other seasons where it's like, it's not so obvious. I'm not able to volunteer like I used to. I'm not encountering the public as much because I got to keep my kid out of trouble. But even then, I've been so challenged, like, you know what? You're going to see somebody at the post office and you're going to see someone at Walmart and you're going to send an email. Like, you may not be looking in their eyes, but that person on the other side of that is customer service. But you know what? That's a human. And you need to, like, just find ways. And he has never once, like, failed to show me a part of who he is. If I'm willing to be interrupted or slow down, which is hard. But,
but that's that treasure hunt.
Yeah.
Realizing
it's
that it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Tell them about your book.
Oh.
If you haven't noticed, or if you don't know Tori and you haven't got a full picture of who she is yet, she has a son named Cosmo Blue.
Yeah.
And she has a book called Kaleidoscope Eyes, right?
That's right.
Look it up.
Yeah, look it up.
How can they look it up? Amazon?
KaleidoscopeEyes.life. It's not on Amazon.
KaleidoscopeEyes.life.
Yep.
And how do you...
Amazon?
No, I just,
right,
I mean, yeah.
You,
should I be,
Is
do you have a
Amazon trying to
controversy
kill
about
us?
that?
do you ever have to clarify, like, do you have to say, like, make sure you spell kaleidoscope right? Because that's kind of a tricky
Should I
word.
spell it?
Yeah, spell it for us.
Can you spell it?
It's like a spelling bee.
Yeah, let's hear it.
KALEIDOSCOPE.
Eyes.life.
Eyes. EYES.life.
Life. And your book is all, like,
got
that
the
story you
stories.
shared
Yeah.
was a part of
It
that
has
book.
your story in it.
I'm in the book.
I don't think we mentioned Chris.
No, we
did.
Sign the
She
waiver.
didn't know if I was really going to be around long enough.
No, I was just like, everything I have on him is embarrassing for me.
But
you're in it. We
you're-
talk about you praying for the cashier and her arm like tingled and she was healed. Because, yeah.
Winn-Dixie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But your book is all about loving people and seeing people in the way that God wants us to see people.
Yep. See differently, love extravagantly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
stuff.
this was so fun. I hope you enjoyed it. This was like a more or less like a ramble session.
It was
So
fun,
fun.
though. At least fun for us. I don't know if it was fun for you guys, but
Yeah. Well,
Thank y'all so much.
of course.
I love
Thanks for
y'all.
being with
This
us.
is such a great podcast.
I know. This was fun. But like we always say on this podcast, Chris's favorite part, by the way, life can be tough, but God is still so good.